in terms of, I mean, not knowing everything, but knowing that you are a resource that they can come to. What are some of those things that you're doing to do that and also intentionally build that trust with your child that we can learn from?
Um, I'll first of all give props to my wife because
Shout out, shout out,
she
shout out.
she stays on top of it and informs me, and she's like, "You need to go and sit down with your son. He's watching this now, and I don't want to be the one to talk to him, so you have to have that conversation." I'm like, "Really? That's going on? Okay, I'll go and sit down there." I'll like very comically, sit down there. I already have my instructions on what to do and what needs to be done. So I give props to my wife. She stays on top of what they're doing, what they're watching, what they're not watching, what they should be watching.
Yep.
Um, you know, even though I'm the teacher in Sunday school, the minute they get in the car, what do you guys learn? Actually, you didn't teach them about. You're only teaching them this thing. You guys are not doing worship. When are you guys going to start doing worship? And I'm like, lady, just take it easy. We're growing. We're getting there. So I have to give props to my wife for staying on top of it. She does that for me. But personally, one of the things I try to do. So when we grew up, right, we grew up in a slightly different environment, right? In Nigeria, your dad, even though my dad and my mom had left Nigeria when they were like 16, 17, didn't come back till their 40s. So they weren't the typical Nigerian parents, right? They were British. And the relationship we had with our dad was very different from all our friends. Like, you go to your friend's house and, oh, that's dad's chair, that's dad's cup. Don't use that cup. And you're like, what? Your dad has a cup? Like,
Yes, our father has a
dad
cup.
gonna have a cup? Like, it's a cup. So we grew up in different environments, but in saying that, with my kids today, I realize that they wanna discuss about their cartoons, right? So my dad would sit down and be there and everything. Would have conversations, but then for me with my kids, I realized like we have to know it all. Like, you have to be in the lingo. They come on with different, slang words and all of those things. And sometimes I have to go back to my coworkers. I'm like, what does this acronym mean? Can you help me out here, guys, with kids? So yeah, staying in touch with the culture, but also letting them know that the culture doesn't define them.
Absolutely.
And there's another culture, which is the Christ culture, which supersedes that culture. And just teaching them that, don't bash the other culture, but let them know who they are within the context of, yes, you're there with them, but you're not like them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just gonna ask another question.
Okay.
What would what is that one thing that you would want your kids to always think about when they think of you? Like, what would you want your child to say? Oh, okay, this is what my father is when they think about you.
So, this is it, right? We're parents by default, right? Once you birth a child, you're automatically a parent. You don't need a skill for that. You're just, by default, you birth the child, so you're a parent. But by design, and I agree with what you said, I'm going to tie that to it in terms of friendship. By design, I want my child to think of me as a friend beyond father. And the reason I say that is, Brochet mentioned something about, in answering your question, being involved in what interests the child. I want to get my son to the point where, and I say my son because of the question, but it's our son,
Absolutely.
right? I want to get him to the
He's
point
like, let's
where,
get it straight.
yeah, I want to get him to the point where, when anything pops up on his mind, I want to be the first person he thinks of, or among the first set of people he thinks of. Because obviously, as he grows, I shouldn't be the only one he's thinking of. So beyond fatherhood, which of course is a whole world on its own, I want to be his friend, where I'm interested in what interests him before I want to educate him, right? And I think that's very important, especially in this generation, because Brochet mentioned something about the dual cultures. We have the Jesus culture on our side, and I like that Jesus culture, and whatever the other culture is. They are more tactical on that side a lot of times than we are. We want to force. We want to impose. That's not what they do there. They lure them in there. Because talking about being involved
Right.
beyond just by design, parenting, right? So at the store, they're like, how many do you need? And she's like, oh, maybe like 11, 12. They're in his class. They're like, okay, you have to call the teacher to get their names. She's like, call the teacher. I know all his friends in class. And she starts to write it down. And the seller and the other buyers in the store are surprised. They're like, this never happens. Every time this